Good afternoon, lads and lasses, and welcome back to Koality Time, our monthly podcast series where we get to sit back and chat, look behind the scenes, answer your guys' questions, and basically ramble on for a few minutes. I don't really have anything specific to talk about in this month's episode. In fact, I hadn't even planned to make it until after my upcoming Koala Explains video on the Falklands War, which should be out in 2 days' time. That one's going to be quite interesting. It's a conflict I really enjoy talking about because there's so much to it and it contains two of my favourite aircraft of all time, which if you want to know what they are, you'll have to tune in and find out. Yes, I'm a bastard, I know. Anyway, besides that, there's just a few updates to talk about and I have a couple of comment questions to answer. So just a reminder, if you want to leave a question for a future episode, then comment down below with the hashtag question, or put them in the questions channel on the Discord, and let's see what we have for today. Let's start out with an easy one, a very important question from Quartius, who asks, waffles or pancakes? Well, in December 2006 and January 2007, my family took a holiday in New Zealand. By the way, if anybody's looking for a top holiday destination, New Zealand has you covered, it's fantastic there. We were in the country for just over 4 weeks, and almost every day we had pancakes for breakfast. Stacks of them. We had them with cream, ice cream, fruit, maple syrup, you name it. We even had one incident where we were brought a little dish out with our pancakes of what we thought was cream, so we put it on the pancakes. It turned out it was butter. And God, it was, and this is the most first world problem I've ever heard of, but the amount of butter on my pancakes that morning was almost unbearable. Okay, it really wasn't that bad, but since that holiday, I've had about 18 pancakes in my life, and I haven't really enjoyed any of them. Got completely turned off. I had my first waffle in, anybody guess? 2016. I've led a sheltered life. Fuck, I love waffles. Still, nothing on a good scone. Scones with jam and cream, now that's living. Anywho, next question is Akira Furelli asks, besides video games, what are your main hobbies? Now this I actually found somewhat difficult to answer, because besides playing video games just regularly or to get footage for videos, and then actually making the videos, researching, scripting, recording, and then editing and uploading them, I don't really have any. I used to. I mean, video gaming has always been the main one, but I also used to play music. I played the piano for years and years, actually performed for a couple of quite big audiences. And I wrote my own music as well, and I used to write stories, books, novels. I was, I think, pretty decent at that. I mean, if I'd have kept up with it, there would definitely have been a career as an author for me, but I just never took the time to try and get anything published. In fact, I'd never actually finished more than 2 of the books I ever wrote. My heart just wasn't in it enough. But I was also very into cars. I never was when I was little. I didn't overly care about cars, racing games. I never had, little figurines of sports cars, supercars. I mean, I had Hot Wheels sets. What boy didn't? And I had the original Need for Speed game on the PlayStation. Yes, the original PlayStation. As well as Need for Speed Most Wanted on the PC later on. But I never really enjoyed those games as much as other styles of games, flying games and RTS games like Age of Empires chief among them. I never wanted to grow up and own a fancy car, work on cars. Actually, as a kid, if you showed me a picture of one of the old Lamborghinis that wasn't that signature wedge shape, I'd probably have called it a Ferrari, if I knew what it was at all. I was more of an environmental advocate. Growing up in Australia, Steve Irwin was all over the place. And he was fantastic. I actually got to meet him once. Absolutely brilliant man. I was probably about 8 when he died, and I was in tears hearing about it. I loved animals. I wanted to work in conservation, actually. Thought I was going to be the next Steve Irwin myself. And above all, I'm still an enormous advocate for clean energy, renewable energy, and carbon emissions and whatnot. And I also loved invention stuff. Yeah, technical term. Does anybody remember a show called Beyond Tomorrow? Or before that, there was Beyond 2000. Basically, they covered inventions, gadgets and whatnot that were going to shape our generation. Automatic checkouts, self-driving cars, smartphones which also serve as metro cards. Plus a whole bunch of things that either didn't come to fruition, it was the 90s to early 2000s after all, or did but aren't really that important in the grand scheme of things. And I thought, as a kid, you know what, electric cars are starting to become a thing. The Prius was getting unveiled worldwide, which at the time I thought was the most amazing thing. I mean, an electric car, a car that doesn't hurt the planet? Well, I was a kid, I didn't really understand it. But I thought, you know what, I'd be happy with one of them. Do my bit, save the environment. Also, if I run down anyone who works in the black market trade for ivory or shark fins or anything to do with poaching, that's just a bonus. Basically, I just wanted a car that could get me from A to B. Didn't really care about anything else. Beyond that, why bother? What got me into cars eventually was a combination of things. I'd always loved models, specifically model railways. I've got an uncle who lives in England whose entire attic is one big model railway, and as a kid, that attic was heaven for me. I adored watching the trains. My uncle's house was full of display cases of different locomotives, carriages, tenders, all that kind of stuff. And he hand-built all of the decorations. I think he used torn up scouring pads for grass and trees and bushes and such. Made all the buildings, or some of them at least. I thought it was fantastic. The way the models interacted with each other, just the whole setup, and the fact that it went throughout the whole room. The thing is, outside of crafting decorations, assembling them, and browsing online or in magazines and hobby shops at the time for what you're going to buy next, you don't actually really do anything with a model railway. The whole purpose of it is for it to run itself. The perfect model railway is one you don't need to touch until you want to put in the next section of track to include a dockyard you just built and painted. So it wasn't really the type of thing my parents expected me, a quite active child who was extremely bad at art, to actually stay interested in if it was something I had. I just loved it because it was at my uncle's place in England and it was a treat, a curiosity. So instead they got me for Christmas one year this model raceway, a slot car racetrack, Scale Electric I think it was called. I still have it somewhere in a box out in the shed probably. But I had so much fun with that, building different tracks. I only had an extremely basic set, and every month or so we'd go down to a local hobby shop. Well, I say local, it was half an hour's drive away. But we'd get a couple of new pieces of track, some new cars. I had a Mazda RX-7, a Subaru Impreza, a Ford Focus, and a couple of others I can't remember. A Lancer Evo, I think. And that got me into cars. That plus the PC game Need for Speed Most Wanted. Later on I got Forza 4 on the Xbox 360, and I was hooked, man. I couldn't get enough of cars. Only toy cars still, I wasn't yet old enough to drive. But then as soon as I was old enough, I started driving. I learned to drive in a Mitsubishi Colt, a little 2004 automatic Econobox, really not a car worthy of a true petrolhead. And eventually I saved up some money, started looking around for something better. And there was nothing. No cool cars, not for any acceptable price range for a 17-year-old at least, not around this area. And I was buying this car on my own money. I didn't have parents offer to get me a car or help out with financing. I couldn't drive a manual, or at least I hadn't learned, still haven't actually, so there you go. And right around this time, I had a pretty significant falling out with my family, so I didn't really have anyone to teach me to drive stick. And like I said, the only cool, interesting cars around this region, Miatas, Imprezas, although I was never really a big fan of the Impreza, Skylines, Lancers, BMW M3s, they were all either way out of my price range, or they had problems, maybe they'd done 300,000 miles. I wasn't keen on buying something that was going to break, because I didn't have a reliable source of income at the time, for reasons I've talked about in a past episode. There just weren't any jobs going in my area. So my first car ended up being a 2003 Mitsubishi Mirage, automatic, 4-cylinder, 2-door hatchback. It felt like it had about 3 horsepower, but it gave me a car, and it gave me independence, something to look after. and I'd spent ages just driving. I had a massive enthusiasm for driving itself, which I got from back playing with that Scalextrics track. Actually, I went from not really caring about cars much to literally wanting to be a Formula 1 driver as a career. Oh, come on, I was 9 at the time, of course I wanted to be a race car driver. But I was a massive nerd as a kid, so when I decided, well, I still am a massive nerd. But when I decided that I wanted to be a race car driver, I didn't just sit around thinking about it and graduating from playing with Hot Wheels to playing with Scalextrics to playing Need for Speed and later Forza. No, I did my homework. That's right, little 9-year-old me walked an hour each way to the local library twice a month to borrow books and videos, yes, videos, VHS tapes, about driving, a little about mechanics, although that side of it never interested me quite so much, but learning about all that sort of thing, racing lines, different driving techniques, etc. Now, owning a car, even though it was a shit car, I just loved being able to get out and drive, roll the windows down, pick a road, and just drive for as long as I liked. I wasn't a passenger in my family's car anymore. And having that falling out with my parents, I used driving as a wee bit of an escape. But that Mirage, which I nicknamed Fish Fingers, although that's a story for another time, I never planned on keeping that car for long. Unfortunately, I crashed it 3 times, 2 of which weren't all that serious. In fact, I repaired the damage mostly myself, it was mostly superficial. But the 3rd time, I totaled it into the back of a Lancer. And I talked about this all the way back in episode 1 of this series, 8 months ago, but that was when I started this YouTube channel, when I was recovering from my accident, not really working, because not only was I recovering, but I didn't have any transport to get to work, which I was getting new jobs every 6 weeks anyway, and I ended up suffering from depression quite a bit. So instead I threw myself into YouTube, focused on that, and no wonder I was able to maintain a daily upload schedule for so long. Would you believe I was actually 4 days off of selling that Mirage when I crashed it, and I was going to use the money from selling it to buy a 92 Honda Prelude, black, VTEC, still a front wheel drive and still a 4-cylinder, but it had a body kit on it that made it look like Darth Vader, and it was actually in my price range. Plus it had scissor wing doors, or Lamborghini doors, which at the time I thought was the most amazing thing since sliced bread, and it was a car I'd really, really wanted. Obviously I didn't get to have it in the end. I actually still have the key to my Mirage, one of them at least, and that's something that I'm going to collect, is a key from every car I ever own. I don't quite know that you're supposed to do that, but anyway. I didn't have insurance when I crashed the Mirage. It was just too expensive. I was a P-plater, I had to insure it under my name because, once again, rocky relationship with my parents at the time. And I didn't have the reliable income to keep insuring it. I had it fully insured at first, of course, for the first couple of years, but after a while I just couldn't afford it, and I only had third-party insurance when I crashed, so I was just left high and dry without a car. I lost that financial asset, which is very bad. Back then, I watched a whole bunch of car channels on YouTube. Car Throttle, Vehicle Virgins, Doug DeMuro, etc, etc. I had so many plans for what I was going to do, what mods I was going to save up for with this Prelude, what car I wanted to get after that. I was a massive car fan at the time. I went out to car rallies and shows, never went to any big races unfortunately, but oh boy, I wanted to. And I would watch these car channels every day, just fueling my passion, pun intended. So when I lost my car and had no hope of affording another one for God knows how many years, it was awful. I was gutted. I was more upset about losing my passion than I was about losing the car itself, just before I was about to sell it, and losing my independence, my job a week later. You get the picture. And continuing to watch all of these car channels was just making me more upset, so I ended up unsubscribing to all of them and basically blotting my love for cars out of my life completely, replacing it with YouTube, playing War Thunder much more regularly, taking on a paper route around my area just to make some money. And the only time I would drive at all was to do favours for my parents, like picking up my little brother from school in their car, that same Colt I learned to drive in. By this point my parents and I had patched things up, although that would only be temporarily before we knocked heads again, but that's not relevant. What's that? Rambling? Yeah, what do you watch this series for? Anyway, it turned out that the insurance I had on my car didn't actually cover any property damage. It was just the third party for personal injury, so if I hurt anyone in an accident, that would be covered by the insurance. But the car I collided with, my brakes locked up in the rain, if you're wondering, I wasn't being stupid. But I had to pay for damages to the other party's car, the Lancer. I actually just finished paying that off this month. Yeah. Over 2 years of paying off that debt in small installments every month because I just didn't have the money after expenses to pay it off. That was embarrassing. Lads, don't let yourself get into that situation. Just don't. But given that I've finally paid off that debt, God, fuck insurance companies, am I right? It was so expensive. I actually went and resubscribed to all those old favourite car channels and started getting back into cars again. Started looking at saving up to buy a car. You don't know how much that excites me. I'm already thinking, alright, what am I getting? What mods am I going to do first? We're going to get a lightened flywheel, seats, wheels, straight pipe, so many things. I even downloaded Need for Speed Most Wanted on my computer, even though that game is so old now, just to muck around for a couple of afternoons and have a bit of fun in one of my old favourite games from back when I was a kid. I got back my dream car in that game, or should I say my dream affordable and achievable car, which is the 5th generation Ford Mustang, which is the one you see in the thumbnail. But there you go, for anyone wondering, my actual favourite car would probably be the Koenigsegg Agera as a modern car, or the C3 Corvette for something older, more classic. But as for something that's actually realistic that I could ever afford, the 5th gen Mustang is... Oh, I'd give my left nut for one of them. Although, even that's still a good few years away. I think that Honda Prelude is more my speed and price range right now. Just because I'm done paying off that debt that's been weighing on me for 2 years though, doesn't mean I'm gonna get a car again straight away. For one, I can't really afford to keep it up. The cost of the car itself would be the least of my worries. The registration, insurance, fuel, these are all ongoing costs, which, on top of my regular expenses, I'd be hard pressed to make. But eventually, I'll claw my way back into the car community, start relearning all of what I used to know. I mean, since I unsubscribed to these car channels and stopped looking at cars, new models have come out, these YouTubers have bought new cars 3 times over and changed their opinions on certain others. The whole market has changed, different models have appreciated or depreciated in value, and I've forgotten a lot that I did know about the mechanical side of things. I'm basically a newbie to this community all over again. But cost is the main thing, and I've still got things on my PC to upgrade for the sake of YouTube, which is my chief income, so that kind of takes precedence. For one, I broke my D. the D key on my mechanical keyboard. The little tab that connects it to the keyboard itself is snapped, so that needs replacing. Yes, my D is broken. Go ahead, make your jokes, it's too good to miss. I don't even know where I can buy just keys, in fact just a couple of keys. I could probably replace the WASD keys all at once to make sure they're part of a set, but there are other things I need. A new editing software for instance, an SSD, graphics card, stuff like that. That should all take precedence first, and it's not even a given that I can afford all of that yet. I mean, I've been saving up for a little while and could easily go out and get some of that stuff, but like I said, eventually I'm going to splurge out and get myself a car, get back into that being a hobby when I can afford it. So, Zakir Firelli, I know that probably didn't quite answer the question you asked, and yet I've rambled on about it for 10 minutes, but that does bring us nicely onto the last subject of today's video, which is about the fundraiser. Now, Koala's Australian Bushfires Appeal is closed to new donations. We did raise over $2,650, which is fantastic. But in the last episode, I talked about an idea wherein, instead of just going online and throwing the money at the Kangaroo Island Wildlife Park, like I have with the 2 other charities, I'd spend some of my own money to take a trip down to Kangaroo Island and give the fundraiser money to them in person, and in turn go into the park and spend some time with the animals and record it to make it a bit of an educational advertising video to kind of draw people's attention to the plight of these animals. Unfortunately, that's not going to be able to happen. Now, some of you did express issue with my apparently using fundraiser money for my own gains, which I promised I was not doing. The accommodation, travel, all of that stuff would have come out of my own personal pocket. The exact same amount of money would have gone to the park either way. But in stark contrast to what I said about cars and saving up for PC parts and stuff, it just would have been too expensive. And I mean close to $1,000 for the travel, accommodation, car hire, food, all of that stuff. For one, Cape Jervis, where the ferry leaves from, is over an hour away, and there aren't any public buses that go down that way, besides a charter bus that costs some $150, I think. Either that or I'd have to hire a car from here and take the car on the ferry, which taking a car on the ferry to Kangaroo Island costs around $300. Unfortunately, there was no one who could give us a lift. It's just a wee bit too far out of the way, and during a time of day when everyone's working. Then the ferry itself is around $50 if you're not taking a car on board, plus around $250 for accommodation, $350 for car hire, and another $100 to $150 on both food and filling up the gas tank once while we're there. That's about $750 of my own money, and I already put money into this fundraiser, which we'd then be giving an additional $900 from that fundraiser to the wildlife park. So too much, too expensive, and not really worth it. See, I was going to use the opportunity, like I said, to make a video and share it around as a bit of a tourist thing, you know, get some more people either wanting to donate or thinking about heading down there themselves if they're able to. Well, with the expenses that a holiday on Kangaroo Island apparently costs, that's not all that likely, but not only that, that kind of video wouldn't really be worth making anymore. See, YouTube, for whatever reason, went and changed their search engine algorithm recently, and I'm not going to ramble on about how terrible YouTube is because we seem to do that almost every other episode. In fact, I woke up today to have to deal with someone re-uploading my content, and fuck if YouTube is going to do anything about that anytime soon. But with YouTube's search engine algorithm currently, well, the viewership of my Koala Explained series dropped by literally 90%, my War Thunder viewership dropped by about 50%, and anything else I upload is basically going to get peanuts for views unless it makes a big splash like my Grind Problem video did. And a whole bunch of YouTubers have noticed this sudden drop off in the views coming in, including other War Thunder YouTubers, other military YouTubers like Maximus noticed a big drop in views. But it kind of came at an awful time for me, because I was just kind of stepping into Koala Explains being a real major and regular part of the channel, and looking at expanding the channel into new audiences, new communities, before our Lord and Saviour YouTube steps in right on cue to fuck everything up. Seriously, my T90 video has almost 400,000 views now, which is insane. A couple of others in the series have over 200,000, which is still huge for me. The Leopard 2's Turret Cheeks episode has just under 300,000, and almost all of them have at least 100,000. Yet the Type 99 video, the Do Fighters Need Guns video, and the Bradley episode all got less than 40,000 so far, and have basically stopped growing completely. And most of those views came from existing viewers. Those videos are not getting out there to new audiences. They're not being recommended, not being promoted the way I and other similar creators rely upon, and the way the previous videos in the series were before these changes. Even the more popular videos in the series just stopped growing at all, stopped getting new viewers. And the new ones, even though the series had a hugely positive response and almost doubled the size of the channel, so now I'm making these videos from the position of a bigger backing, haven't even gotten a third of the amount of views they should have. Now, the Bradley and Type 99 ones I kind of understand, they're vehicle spotlights. They should probably have got double that viewership, if not more, but the Fighters Guns one, that I expected to achieve a minimum of 150,000 views, hopefully more like 250,000 given how much that series had been growing. And yet it's got less than 40,000 as well. In fact, the three of them have almost the exact same number of overall views, and the exact same ratios of new viewers to existing ones. So basically, if I uploaded a video with the koalas and wombats on Kangaroo Island, honestly, it would probably get less than 5,000 views, thanks to how shit YouTube's new search engine algorithms are, and how much they've utterly killed any chance for any YouTuber to start growing or start expanding into new content now. Unless you know someone who can shout you out. Like the Russian Badger, for instance. Yeah, we'll talk about that in a couple of days' time. Anyway, I think that should just about do us for this month's podcast. Thank you lads for watching, I hope you enjoyed, got something out of it. And I hope you aren't too disappointed that I won't be going down to the island and making a video there. Instead, we'll just be putting the rest of the money into online donations, as was always the plan anyway. And of course, I'll post the screenshots as proof on the Discord and the fundraiser itself for anyone interested in making sure you know where your money's going. This episode turned out to be a lot longer than expected, but until next time, which will be a Koala Explains episode actually on the Falklands War, keep your bagpipes in one hand, a whiskey in the other, keep your kilt on, and I'll catch you lads in the next one.